Watch this.
Traffic circles, rotaries, roundabouts. You can call them what you want. Some people, though, just call them too dangerous. At least the only one of its kind in Ada County. We find out if it's true. Confronting hate with color. The city of Boise is hoping an artistic alternative in place of discrimination will generate tolerance and acceptance, a darkness leading to light. You know, roundabouts in the Treasure Valley have historically seemed to be a tough pill to swallow for drivers. The first major one in the area was put in 16 years ago at the intersection of Amity and Happy Valley in Canyon County. Well, complaints of too confusing came in almost as soon as it was completed. There's always been a learning curve, pun intended, when it comes to roundabouts. We now have more than a dozen, though, scattered around the Treasure Valley with more than, well, I guess a lot more on the way. Most of them are of the single lane variety, meaning there's just one lane that goes around the circle. You enter and you exit from that same circular lane. A little more than a year ago, Ada County Highway District, well, they upped the ante and upped the lanes, creating the county's first two-lane full roundabout. And it's created a lot of confusion and apparently a lot of car crashes for the intersection of Eagle and Amity roads, which prompted this text message from Sarah. "It's dangerous," she said. "There needs to be a light there. People don't know how to drive roundabouts around here. I'm a native, and it's a great way to help with growth, but not on busy intersections. I almost get in an accident every time I go through there," she said. "I'm in a minivan, and I almost got pushed out of the intersection by a school bus going way too fast on Tuesday," said Sarah. So why is the change at that intersection needed? Well, ACHD says roundabouts are safer, but is it really safer if people don't know how to use them? Here's Andrew Bartline.
The people of Ada County had this intersection circled from the beginning, rounded on the corners of Eagle Road and Amity.
Some word of crashes occurring definitely early on, and the roundabout was expanded to a dual lane.
Expanded because the number of drivers through the intersection grew too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Colby Gadaris is the traffic engineer supervisor at ACHD. He says complaints about the intersection tapered off with time.
I think with any change, it takes some getting used to.
But the initial signs show the intersection just wasn't enough because the amount of crashes were abnormally high.
We also got some feedback from our law enforcement partners soon after it was expanded.
In 1 year, Meridian Police report 67 car crashes at the intersection alone. And like public complaints, crashes too have become less frequent with time. And ACHD says they have no plans to abandon the roundabout design.
Roundabouts just inherently make people drive slower. They cut down on the conflict points that can occur. So they're going to be a lot safer compared to a traffic signal or even an all-way stop control in the right situation.
But is it really safer if drivers don't know how to use it?
Now, we'll break this down in the simplest terms. Now, pardon us here for this crudely drawn diagram. For the purpose of an explanation, we'll be these red and blue cars here and focus on them. Now, they need to slow down as they are approaching the roundabout. I'm talking 15, 20 miles an hour. Reason for that? It's their job to yield. There should be a yield sign right here because cars that are already in the roundabout have to get out and through. Once it's clear, these two cars have the option to go. And you get two options from each lane. The signs line it up for you. If you're this red car in the right lane, you can turn right. This red car in the right lane can also continue straight. As for the blue car, they can also continue straight, but if they're in the left lane, they have the option to turn out here and get through on the left side. Right lane goes right, left lane goes left. Both lanes can continue straight through.
We're asking people to learn something new, and if they've been driving for several years or very few years, it's a whole new thing to learn.
And it's better not to learn the hard way, like the 67 previously recorded crashes. These intersections are not designed for the turning radius of a big truck, so keep your eyes open, because you just might need to get out of their way.
If you see a truck entering the roundabout on a dual lane approach, just slow down and stay behind them and give them the right of way to get through the roundabout, because they might be using both lanes. So play a defensive driver.
ACHD understands the growing pains that people may not be receptive to these changes instantly, but it has been a year, and ACHD says they are always open to public comment, and that's a large part of their job as well. And it's kind of hearing what the community says, heading out to that site, seeing what the problems are, and making changes where changes need to be. We already mentioned they've done different lines, they've put up different signs, trying to make it as clear as possible exactly how this is supposed to operate.
Okay, so first of all, don't apologize for your drawings, Doc Brown. It was a well-illustrated
Thank you.
demonstration of how to use the two-lane roundabout. But I anticipate people are still going to complain about the way the system is set up. But as you said, you simplified it pretty simply.
Yeah, right goes right, left goes left. You can both stay straight through. If you want to go straight, just stay in your lane.
Yeah, and if you've ever driven in Europe, you can zip through those things pretty quickly.
Yeah, I don't even think they have lines some places in Europe. Everybody just knows how they go, and there's two lanes, but they're not even divided with lines on the road. They just get it there.
And I know we had this discussion in the newsroom because there are going to be people who are going to comment that there are two-lane roundabouts in other places around Ada County, but not all the way around. It's just that partial two-lane. I think of Fort Street and Broadway, or Avenue B over there by St. Luke's. Yep. I think of one also in the Harris Ranch area. Yeah, it has two lanes, but then also just one lane.
Yeah, it's like one side of it, it's half it. It's weird, but this is the only, or the first, I should say, true two-lane roundabout in Ada County.
All right, hopefully that clears some things up. Thank you very much, Andrew. All right, you know, the Moody Blues were the first. The first concert held at the brand new Idaho Center was a group that brought us Nights in White Satin. That was back in 1997. It was the same year the CBA brought professional basketball to the Gem State. Remember the Idaho Stampede? They played at the Idaho Center. A year later, they even brought Spud Webb to play for the Idaho Stampede. Well, in these past 25 years, it's been countless concerts and holiday bazaars. Of course, the Snake River Stampede's been there, and it's now the Ford Idaho Center. But during that whole time, there have been concerns over traffic and parking that has plagued the arena's opening, despite Nampa City leaders, well, they were certain of future planning in that area. So we're going to take it back to 1997, 25 years ago, for a look at the early days of the Ford Idaho Center.
We're going to do everything within our power. We're going to work, if it takes 24 hours a day, that's what we're going to do to make it right for the public.
Peter Jackson is assistant director of the Idaho Center and says Nampa's newest entertainment center would not have opened if it wasn't completed enough to handle 8,000 Moody Blues fans.
We have the safety of the public at heart.
Jackson says a few more months are needed before the interior of the building is finished, and it was him who made some last-minute changes to the walls just before the concert for better acoustics. The outside of the building is still under construction. Jackson says ground was broken just today on a new parking lot, which will help for parking when Barry Manilow performs in 2 weeks. When it comes to other issues of traffic, city leaders say they're relying on their collaborative efforts with other jurisdictions, like the Highway Department.
There's a lot of things. In fact, some of the traffic problems are totally out of the hands of Nampa City.
Tom Dale is a Nampa City Council member.
At some point in time, this intersection up here underneath the interstate will have to be widened. 2 lanes will never be adequate for that. It's not adequate now.
Dale says the Idaho Center is not complete, but definitely usable.
People come to an event like this knowing that it's not completed. We've never said that it's totally done. In fact, this is a multi-year project.
A multi-year project that officials still visualize as an entertainment center of the Treasure Valley. Lane Lyon, Idaho's News Channel 7.
Wow, if you've been out there lately, you see all the stuff that's around there that didn't used to be there. And yes, it seems like it's been more of a decades-long project for that intersection at Garrity there. It's always under construction. The highway's been widened, the underpass has been widened, they put buildings everywhere. It's completely changed in these past 25 years. Well, today the arena hosts state basketball tournaments. It's got a horse expo right next door. There's Buckaroo breakfast, of course, for the Stampede, the Idaho Stampede, the Snake River Stampede. And all the national rodeo tours, the PBR, all of them come through the Ford Idaho Center. Idaho Center staff looking for your memories over the years at the venue, celebrate their silver anniversary. You're asked to submit those to the center's website, and I think the acoustics have improved a bit since those opening days, a bit.
Step into another person's shoes while walking through one of Boise's Greenbelt tunnels. That's the hope of Boise's art community, who's using a mural to teach tolerance in a place that really hasn't been known for that. All right, here's your reminder. This is our number, 208-321-5614. Use it to text us anytime about pretty much anything. Just be sure to include your name and the hashtag the 208. But if you want to be a part of today's show, we need you to send your messages during today's show, and we might share yours at the end of this show, so stick around. The Southern Poverty Law Center, the nonprofit specializing in civil rights and monitoring hate groups, well, they list 10 ways in which a community can fight hate, should it rear its ugly head. Things like speak up, support the victims, teach acceptance. Well, there are two others on the list: act and create an alternative. Those are both being accomplished by what has just been completed along Boise's Greenbelt. Nearly a year ago, several downtown tunnels were spray painted with profanity and hate-filled anti-Semitic graffiti. One of those is right next to the Anne Frank Human Rights Memorial. They were quickly covered, but left behind were empty walls, a blank canvas just begging for some sort of covering, something the opposite of hate. So Boise's Arts and History Commission, Boise City Council, the Wasma Center, Boise State, local artists and stakeholders, they all decided to act and create an alternative. A 6-day project to fill the 8th Street Tunnel with color and kindness, tolerance instead of the alternative. It's been said, the beginning is the most important part of the work. Well, rolling out the cart for Addie Boswell is the beginning. But so is laying out the drop cloth, pulling out the tape, and smoothing out the surface so she can get to the other important part of the work.
I feel kind of stressed out until I get started. Then once I get paint in my hands, then I relax, I guess. Once we start getting the bright colors out, that's when I get excited. This is the train.
Addie is a muralist from Portland, Oregon.
I'm happiest when I'm covered in paint and out in the community painting a wall somewhere.
Painting this wall, this tunnel under an old railroad bridge, is a response to a recent incident of racist graffiti, meant to be a message of hate considering its location, leading to Boise's Anne Frank Human Rights Memorial. Covering that canvas of contempt is what Addie was asked to do.
There's a line in Rent, the musical, that the answer to war isn't peace, it's creation. And I've always loved that line. I think, that's the best thing you can do.
Aided by her daughter's hula hoop,
I think I'm gonna have to get her a new one too, because I got it all painty.
Addie says the idea is centered on a series of circles.
Does help with the circles.
Filled with what it's like to be a Boisean.
Come help us if you want. I'll give you a paintbrush.
What it's like to step in another person's shoes, to see from another point of view.
Inclusivity was the big thing, because it was in answer to this graffiti that was anti-Semitic. This was all about inclusion. So I started with just real people from Boise that these are all representative of, and different ways they've stood up to injustice and just shine their light is the kind of phrase that I'm using, different ways they shine their light. At the end, we have a Jewish grandmother who's based on my friend Ruth. She's lighting her Shabbat candles. Then we have a guy in a hand cycle. I think of him as a disabled vet. He has the American flag flying from his bike. And a laborer, maybe a Latino laborer who's working in the fields. We have a refugee mom who's sending her little boy off to school.
Even the inclusion of nature is a nod to the indigenous people.
Yeah, some trees, some sunflowers. The blue along the bottom is meant to represent kind of the river and also just how important water is to the whole, the whole world.
The entire mural, top to bottom, is grounded in the chestnut tree, symbolic of Anne Frank's connection to the outside world while she hid from Nazis in an attic.
In all the overlapping circles, we've got all these symbols that represent different cultural groups and different things people are proud of, so symbols and flags. And it's all kind of, mixed together in a mosaic because we're all connected, whether we want to be or not. So.
All squeezed into about 1,000 square feet.
Oh, it's never enough space, but I jammed as much as I could in there.
And she did it with the help of dozens of actual Boiseans.
I mean, every time I walk by, I'll smile at it.
I think we've had maybe 60 or 70 all together helping out. It's been really cool.
It brings me a lot of joy that there's lots of communities here being represented because they all deserve visibility, in my opinion.
Because, Addie says, this is more our mural than hers.
So the more people who get their hands on the walls, the more they take ownership of it, and the more they protect it, honestly, and take care of the art over its lifetime. So I think that's what public art's about, really.
Ooh, cool.
Thanks.
Oh, and it's also about the reaction.
Wow, beautiful.
Lots of positive reinforcement. That's kind of nice.
Wow.
Picture of
Good job.
Wow. What do you see? I like that she's touching it. That's great.
Wow. Turned out so nice.
Addie hopes those who do take the time to look at it see all the layers woven into it, and the figurative and literal light at the end of the tunnel.
So you get this feeling of, as you're passing through, there's kind of darkness surrounding you, but you have that like shining light. And then you come out into the Wadsmith Center, which is like filled with light and this very like serene, peaceful place. And you kind of like, you let the breath out after you pass through the tunnel. That's the feeling we're going for. We'll see.
It's pretty awesome. Addie says they still haven't come up with a name for the mural, but they are taking suggestions. She's thinking something to do with light, as she said. The light we shine, something along those lines. And while Addie hopes people do take the time to look at the mural and see how all it has to show, there's a word of warning with this. That section of the Greenbelt, if you're familiar with it, is at the confluence of a couple of blind bends and a downhill slope, a section where bike riders and scooters just kind of zip through. So be careful, but do take the time to check it out.
Well, you've been hearing all week about the changes in the weather coming up this weekend. Here it is Wednesday. It's a little early, but it's becoming more apparent what's going to be taking place. So let me start with some of the mountain locations. If you're considering the mountains this weekend, it's a big change, huge change from what we had last weekend. Here's Stanley, which could be getting anywhere from about 3 to 6 inches of snow, but actually I'm looking probably about 2 to 3 because it's going to be kind of soggy up there. But you're going to be seeing snow if you go up to the Stanley area. That's going to be for Saturday morning, temperature down to 16. Watch for fog, 10 degrees for Sunday morning as well. Be kind of horrible traveling conditions in some of those spots. Now, when you look at Sun Valley, a little further to the south, a little more rain and snow. So I don't think you're going to be seeing as much in the way of accumulation in the Sun Valley area. But nonetheless, you'll still see some snow and some mixture of some rain and snow. And then in McCall, it's kind of a race between McCall and Stanley as to the most snow. That's also about another area that could be anywhere from 2 to 3 inches, but I've seen as high as 6 inches of snow depending on some locations. Starts to break up as we get into Sunday, but some cold mornings. Now we talk about snow, here's McCall, at least in this one particular model, showing more snow than Stanley, but then they flip-flop in other models. As you look here at Haley, it does show some snow, same thing for Twin Falls and the foothills. So look at the foothills, especially on Sunday morning, okay, which I know you will. And as you do, you'll see some of the snow showers at the very top. Now this is Thursday. High clouds move through, means the storm system's coming in on Friday. There it is, and there it is. And you can see in the mountains, there's your snow. So let's look at the 7-day forecast. You have warm temperatures for tomorrow and Friday. Saturday morning, it starts with rain as early as 2 o'clock in the morning, and then winds about anywhere from 15 to 25 miles an hour. As it decreases, you'll see some frost on Sunday morning, temperature down to 35, possible for Thursday morning. Still some scattered showers that continues throughout most of next week.
All right, we ask you this all the time, every day, sometimes several times a day. Be part of the 208 conversation. A lot of times that includes you sending us questions which we try to answer. Sometimes we get questions that come right out of the blue, and those are the ones we actually kind of dig most because it gives us a chance to get out and find out something we probably didn't know from the very beginning. We got one like those Friday from a viewer in Nampa who asks, why does Idaho make you buy the multiplier on Powerball when surrounding states don't? All right, it's a good question. Make you buy the multiplier on Powerball. Having not purchased a Powerball in Idaho in quite some time, I didn't know the answer to that question, but we went straight to the source, the Idaho Lottery. Dave Workman, the public information specialist for that agency, says in August of 2021, the national Powerball underwent some changes, which included increasing the price of all Powerball tickets to $3. And that price automatically included a power play. That power play multiplies non-jackpot winning prizes from 2 to 10 times, up to $2 million. So, for example, if you won $50,000 playing Powerball and you had that power play multiplier of 5, a jackpot's going to be actually $250,000. So it's a good thing, right? It was a decision made by the Idaho Lottery and is specific to Idaho. However, Montana, they do have a similar program in place. We called around on that too. But all the other states, well, kind of they set their own rules. So why does Idaho do it? Because we set our own rules. All right, you guys love traffic stories, but kind of a mixed bag when it comes to roundabouts. We get a lot of these, too, throughout the show. Another two-lane roundabout is by the Whitewater Park. Well, we looked at several others that we thought were two-lane roundabouts, and they're not. There's a little sliver that's just one lane, including the one by the Whitewater Park. It is a small sliver that's just one lane, not a complete two-lane roundabout. The two roundabouts on Fort are wonderful. Warm Springs needs one, says Paul in Boise. So again, lots of people love them. Great piece on how to drive the roundabout. Thanks. We maneuver them often in Europe and find most drivers seem to do well on them. Just like driving freeways, you plan ahead, you know where you're headed before you get into the middle of it. It's good advice. Know where you're going. The biggest problem with traffic circles is that people don't use turn signals when exiting the circle, including law enforcement. Oops. It's not just a good idea, it's a law as spelled out in the state driver's manual. Get with it, folks. Gary C. ranting from Nampa this afternoon. The two-lane roundabout is a piece of cake. There were several of them when I visited South Carolina. After going through them a couple of times, I was zipping through like I'd been there all my life. Diana says, don't be afraid of them. Just think about where you're going, figure it out, get in, and, well, just kind of go with the flow if you have to. Roundabouts are dangerous. I, too, have had a terrible close call at Eagle and Amity. They're not safer if you need a diagram to figure it out, says Kathy in Boise. But don't get me wrong, Kathy. Isn't the Idaho Driver's Manual full of diagrams to teach you how to drive? Isn't that kind of how we learn to drive, by looking at some diagrams? Whenever I enter the traffic circles near St. Luke's in Boise, I mutter, maybe through the mud, the circle rules, meaning whoever's in the circle has a right of way over those trying to get into the circle. Might seem obvious, but helps you get through it. We'll see you tomorrow.